Okay, journal entry number 3, which is the last journal entry, I believe. So I went off the grid for 2 days. The last one I read was June 12th. This is June 15th, 2022, Wednesday. Oh my goodness, I wrote this in military time. That's when you know. The other days I wrote, what was it, like 10:04 a.m., which I guess is technically still military time without the AM. But here I wrote 17:22. June 15th, 2022, Wednesday, 17:22. Good night. Okay, so it says, holy shit, flaming hot shit in a dumpster fire, actually. I'm 5 days into this Navy camp, and it is possibly the hardest thing I have ever done. The experience itself, as well as everyone in the chain of command, has been great, I guess, in parentheses, but just no words. I've had no time to journal the atrocities, the failures, the pranks, the pain, and the peanut butter, but rest assured, knowing I survived. I just texted my parents and fam for the first time in 2 days. 2 days. Today, I conquered sea trials, which, side note, we'll get to in a second. Today, I conquered sea trials and Endhawk. Oh my god. Endhawk. I can't even. Resuming. Damn 30 minutes straight of stress and high pressure with your detailer. Oh, that's what we called our squad leaders. With your detailer giving your squad a beatdown about rates. You had all of 4 hours, if that, to recite word for word. And I mean that. Even saying the or and when it's not in the official print gets you dropped on your face. I don't know if I'll ever forget it, but if I do, I hope it isn't too far buried in my memory where these words won't trigger instant PTSD and vivid memories. Having to clean my room for inspection soon, but if I think of more stories before blacking out the last few days, I'll report back. XOXO. Okay, so a few things to unpack here. So we have Endhawk, we have sea trials, and we have peanut butter. So when I was talking earlier about how you have to remember that these, at the end of the day, are literal teenage hooligans, then you can understand that through every hard, like for every hard ass moment, maybe for every 2, honestly, there was a moment that was so funny. I was laughing my ass off, and you would look around being like, okay, is it fine to laugh? Like, is this an okay moment? Normally meals were the only time where you could really breathe, which honestly bit me in the ass later, which I can also get to. Anyway, so the peanut butter. Again, my detailer, which is my squad leader, that's Payne that I'm talking about, he decided it was going to be funny to start a prank wars because he had told us during one of the meetings about all the crazy pranks, because during Army Navy week, it's prank week. And the insane stuff that we heard, for example, one of the most memorable ones, someone filled the Navy pool with dumbbells and stuff. Like, they tossed the entire weight room in the pool and ended up costing the school thousands upon thousands of dollars in repairs. Another one snuck into their lieutenant's office and like hung everything from the ceiling. Oh my gosh. Someone brought a boat. I don't even understand the physics of this. Someone brought a boat into the CAF. That one I can't even get into. But so anyway, after talking about all of these trials during their like prank weeks and stuff and the lore that had gone down, because this is the truest form of lore, basically, is this prank week and like things, because the boat wasn't in Payne's year. I think he was just talking about that from being passed down from ages. So what he does after this conversation is he was like, throw me 2 pieces of white bread. And then all of a sudden he's like, pass me the peanut butter and a knife. He starts smathering each piece of bread with so much peanut butter. It's probably like a half an inch off of the bread itself. And then he points to Joey, one of my squad members. And also, side note, we didn't know any of each other's first names until the last day, which I think is really funny. We only knew each other's last names, not first names. And so calling him Joey now is funny. But so he points to Joey and was like, you're coming with me. Get stealth. And he like is squatted down, and the both of them are running, but at like a crab walk level practically. And they go all the way across the calf and they sneak up on the second in command. I'm blanking on the official name for the guy. Second in command. Couldn't make this shit up. This is one of my favorite memories. I'm like actually having chills. It's so funny, and I remember being there because it actually wasn't funny for a little bit until we got away with it. But so sneak up behind the second in command of the entire platoon, makes Joey, he like gives him the peanut butter and was like, follow me, and then makes him peanut butter him in the ears. Both sides, whack. And then they start running for dear fucking life. And they run back to our table. Sorry, I'm actually screaming this mic. They run back to our table and slide in. And he was like, act normal, everyone talk, everyone eat, act normal. And the second in command stomps, like in his military boots, is stomping. And you hear him. And he followed his vision after the shock immediately followed to the table, but he couldn't see the exact one they sat at. And so he was prowling around the table next to us. And then he was prowling ours on the table after that. And he was screaming. And he was like, who? And then he ended up stomping out with the peanut butter toast still on his ears. Like, it was so much peanut butter, it stuck like glue to his ears. And he stomped out then. And everyone started laughing. It was so unreal. This was like the first time we probably laughed in days. And so everyone had just like built up so much emotion. Even if they wanted to cry, it came out in laughs. And that was just like, there were certain lights at the end of small tunnels, you know what I mean? And that also really just built the community, because even though you're like on the line with all these people and like sweating and being punished together and whatever, you're also laughing together. And that was so funny. And the fume, holy moly, if peanut butter wasn't blocking it, there would have been fume coming out of his ears. Okay, the second thing in the journal entry that I was going to talk about was sea trials. So sea trials is on your last day, your last full day at least. And sea trials is an actual thing at the end of plebe summer of the 6-week program I was talking about before. And we do sea trials, but a modified version at the end of 6 days. And so we were in the same spaces that they do the actual trials at, but they had blocked off certain things solely for, I don't know, injury purposes. I mean, we did sign a lot of waivers and stuff along the way. And again, like, it's all physically taxing, but you're in the woods for this. And so in the actual thing, they do really crazy obstacles that you're hopping over and through and whatever. And so we're doing pretty quick, crazy ones, but we didn't do everything. Like, they did block off some of the more like dangerous ones. So even though it was pretty scary, I would just like look over to the next obstacle that would be netted off, and I'd just be counting my lucky stars that I didn't have to do that one at least. But so sea trials is between every company. So I had said before that there were 5 companies, I believe. I was Echo Company, we were called the Meatballs, and every single year and every single program you compete for Iron Company. And Iron Company is the most like prestigious thing. It just seems like everything in the moment. And the midshipmen make it seem like everything, because again, they're coming right off their plebe year. That's the midshipmen for the most part that are selected to coach you through this. And so they either like just lost or won their Iron Company, and this is their best revenge to win it. And so you have like water games, woods games. I mean, again, games is like a very positive sounding thing for it. And you go all day without a break. In this, you're eating lunch on the go. I remember we started at like the track field, and then we moved to the woods after that, I think. And then we moved to a space by the water before then having to get in the water. The order of things is kind of jumbled in my mind, but basically you just have a bunch of different categories of activities and you want to score the best. And so the best looks like the most reps for certain things, and everything is timed. And so then you have like the quickest times for stuff and whatever, and it all adds up at the end, and you see like who is Iron Company. For this, I remember we had to go single file through the woods and we had to run a route. And within that route, you have like ropes and things that you have to do. And there was like there was a mini canyon, I guess I would call it. It was probably like a 6-foot drop, like 5 or 6 foot drop. And there was a rope across it. And mind you, they hadn't changed the ropes out for a while. They were not taught. And so it was really hard to balance, and you had to hook your foot in a certain way and go on your stomach and pull yourself across the rope. That was kind of the vibe for that. And it was so hot, but they made you wear sweatpants, like sweats for it. And that was kind of insane. Although, like, of the days, even though this was hard, it was the light at the end of the tunnel. I know I keep saying that, but it was the final day and everyone was just maxing out. And everyone just figured that they could push through a little more. Like, some people were worse for wear and not making it through. Again, like, I don't want to say any of this was easy. Like, people were crying. That was totally a thing. But so you go through sea trials and you have like face paint on and eye black, and I mean, you're in the water and then crawling through the woods and you're just a mess. And so it's just, how can you not make fun of yourself and make fun of this unreal experience? And you're lifting like logs that are hundreds of pounds, like between a few people. And if you're like collapsing, the midshipman would have to like run and like lift up the end of the log, so at least they don't have like 100% of a lawsuit on them, I guess. I don't know. But so you have like a bunch of different things. I don't think we won Iron Company for that one, actually. And I'm actually surprised that I don't remember whether or not we won Iron Company. It's something that I feel like I would have remembered if we won, but also I really have a hard time believing that we didn't. But anyway, I do remember the coming back. In order to get to the woods, you were on a boat. So they boated you to an undisclosed location during sea trials that you didn't know where it was. And then they boated you back. And I remember the vibe in the boat being solemn. Like, we had just gotten through the sea trials and yet everyone knew something was up. It was not late enough in the day for this to be the end. And we also hadn't been quizzed on our rates yet. Our rates was all the information on the sheet that I had mentioned before. So think of all the rankings of officers, all the songs. You had to know what's it called? You had to know like the statement of the Naval Academy. I forget what it was. That was a really long one. And we hadn't been quizzed on our rates yet. But throughout the week, like once or twice, the detailers were like hinting at the fact that we really should. But again, you're just constantly exhausted and you can't find time. So I remember I had my rates in my pack and I took them out and I was on this boat back. It was probably, I don't know, maybe like 15, 20 minutes if I remember correctly. And the entire time I was like, all right, we're in for it. I just can feel it in the air. This isn't over yet. And I don't know what's coming, but I don't think it's good. This was not the last stretch that we all thought we were maxing out at. And I remember we were filed into the barracks and we were told to line up, and then we were told to face the wall, and we had never faced the wall. We always faced out and forward, and we were told to face the wall. And the second in command, who had just been peanut buttered the day before, comes stomping in and yelling at the top of his voice. I blacked out in that moment. You are just like in survival mode. And so your body just kind of shuts down and does muscle memory. And that muscle memory was like shoulders back, face first. And I was looking at like a bulletin board. So I couldn't see in the reflection of any tiles where he was. But amongst 115 kids, we were all staring at the wall in like a rectangle. And you just hear his boots. And his boots are getting closer and closer. And he's yelling and he's yelling. And he's talking about like, I actually couldn't even tell you. I just remember fear, because we don't know the rules of engagement of them at this point, and rumor has it that they had been broken. And so we were like, what is off the table? We have done so many crazy things. What is on and off the table? And so then he starts telling us that we are allowed to, like, we have safety words. And then and I was like, oh my God, for what? For what? Like red and yellow, red, like what is going on? And so he was like, all right, like safety words, can't remember what it was right now, but he was like, at any point in time, you can say them. And then everyone starts, like all the midshipmen, all the detailers start running and like shoving and relocating you. And so we're in this big, like long hall essentially, and we were all in a relatively tight knit, like we were shoulder to shoulder in this part of the hall, but then it kind of opens up to a different area. And so we were all like shoved down into that different area, and we were dispersed amongst that entire hall, but we were still so close to all these other squads. So now we're back in our squads, and our detailer, Payne, who I keep talking about, the person that you feel if you could trust anyone would probably be them, even though you feel like you can't trust anyone in the situation, they start going at you. And it was insane. I know I keep using that descriptor, that adjective, but the whole experience was just insane. But especially this part where they just flipped a switch, and it was like I had never met him before in my life. None of us recognized this crazy character that was spitting in our faces, yelling, like red in the face, shaking from fatigue. He was screaming so loud, quizzing us on these rates. So he would be like, what is the ranking for a blah 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 in the military? And you'd have to be like, 03, 02, whatever, and you'd have to sound off. Or he would actually single you out a lot of the times too, and he'd be like, Morden, what is the statement of the Naval Academy? And like I said in that journal entry earlier, if you were off by and or the, it could be filler words that you think are minuscule, and even if they are minuscule, you get dropped on your face, it's called. And so they say like, get down, and you're on like not cement, you're on just like, I mean, I guess kind of cement tiles, and you're sweating because you had just come from outside from about 8 hours of physical activity, I would estimate. And so you're hot and kind of sunburned from that experience, and you're dehydrated, and then all of a sudden, like, you're sweating from the outside, but now from nerves probably, and you're kind of cold sweating, and you'd like be on your face and you'd be trying to grip the flat ground. This isn't like the turf when I was trying to grip it in my plank. This was just next level. And so I think I was off by and or the, and he was like, that's not fucking in there. Get on your face. And you just can't even protest that. You can't be like, I was off by one word. They don't care. Because even if you were right, they can say you said it too slow or something like that you didn't actually know it, and then get on your face. And then so I remember we were off, but very close to our rates a lot of the time. And so after like 3 people had got something wrong, he was like, you guys are an embarrassment. Like, can anyone get it right? Can anyone tell me? Whatever. And then I remember it was like 3 other people for one question. Then he came to me. He was like, Morning, can you please get it right? And whatever. And then he would just be like cursing and spitting, and you would be holding a plank. And I remember, again, after those 8 hours and all that time, like given all these external factors, you're just holding on for your dear life, because then everyone would be on their face at one point. And keep in mind, again, we're all in the same hall with all these other squads. It is so loud. I have been to so many concerts in my life, and I have never in my life experienced something so loud and ear-shattering as that moment. I feel like the ringing in my ears now, and I can see the point where I was on the wall. And so for as much as Payne was screaming at us and shaking from fatigue for how loud he was talking, there were other people not even 2 feet away from your right, another squad getting totally grilled. I remember you're looking front forward, but I remember hearing in my ears to the right and then kind of seeing in my peripheral vision that they were doing push-ups, nose to the ground push-ups, being monitored, having to say with every rep, I am a disappointment. I am a disappointment. It was just bizarre. And so then I remember one of my squad mates, he had answered incorrectly like 3 times in a row. And he was then told he was singled out and he was doing punishments one-on-one and we all had to watch him. And he was basically being yelled at that he was the weakest link and like, how does it feel to suck at everything in his life, basically. And it was so bad that everyone else in my squad but me cried. I am not making this up. I was looking ahead, but my mates were shaking and you could hear their sobs. And so they're not breaking, they're not saying the safe word, but they are crying. And I was just shocked. I had no tears left to cry though. I mean, actually, I was pretty numb the entire time because you learn to compartmentalize really fast in this experience. And so actually throughout the whole 6 days, I didn't cry once. The second I was off base, I like had a moment for sure. But I was just so numb to it by this point. I didn't have it in me, but it was not the same for my squad mates. And I remember actually, no offense, like being kind of proud of myself that I didn't cry in that moment when everyone else had, and not to be stereotypical, but like they were men. They're supposed to be the quote unquote tough guys, and like the one girl in the squad is the one not crying. And so we went through 30 minutes of hell. 30 minutes of interrogation is what this was. It's called NDOC. And then all of a sudden it ends. It is the craziest, like you get a signal and they all stop and then your ears are ringing with what you have just been yelled at for 30 minutes. And so you just feel insane. Like you are out of your mind in this moment. And then just as quickly as the switch flipped on, it flipped off. And all of a sudden, the detailers are like congratulating you and they're your friends now. But you don't trust them. Like you're not looking at them the same. I couldn't wrap my head around how much I didn't recognize any of them. Because you get to know your detailer, but then you get to know other detailers too because you have to remember their name. And you're quizzed on everyone's names too. And so, like, Alex was one of the guys, the other detailer's name, and he was a terrifying being. Holy shit. And so your ears are ringing, and they start telling you that the last program, just the week prior, they had, I believe, it was 12 was the number. Don't quote me on that. But they had over 10 people use the safe word. And they also said, to add to that, for those 10 people that used the safe word and for that group, they only went for 15 minutes. We went for 30. We literally went for 30 minutes, double that time. And yet, not a single person used the safe word in our entire company. I was so proud of us then. And they had said also that they went extra hard on us, again, breaking rules of engagement, like getting like nose, like touching even nose to nose or and cursing and stuff. Like they had broke those rules of engagement versus the week prior where they were actually pretty close to it. And they had said they also kind of blurred the line between like friends and detailers and squad mates and stuff like that. So it was harder to yell at them. And so this week they were instructed to go harder the entire week and be like soulless adjacent. So then when NDOC came, it was easier for them to be mean and to get in your face and to be scary and all of that stuff. And so they were like, yeah, we were meaner for longer. And yeah, you might have cried, some of you, but you all got through it. And so that was something I don't think I will ever forget. Really, like those push-ups being like, I am not a disappointment, that's not the worst that I have heard. Some things cannot be repeated on this podcast. Just saying. Another funny moment actually that was, I believe, the day after the peanut butter incident, I was in the mess hall and we were being introduced to one of Payne's friends. And she had her cap on and I didn't see her bun, like, and everyone's just dressed the same. And we're told to sound off. And so, like, you get in trouble if you're not yelling. But then when you yell the wrong thing, it's really hard to hide. And I had called her a sir by accident. And that was the worst thing in my life. And so Payne had gotten my face being like, you just called her sir. I know it was you. I know it was you. And I tried to deny it and it just wasn't working out. And so he was like, by 3 p.m. today, you need to produce me a list of 10 reasons of why XYZ person is a woman. And then so I was in classes that day for part of the day. And I remember like being in my classes on my notepad, just not paying attention and trying to produce these reasons. And I remember I went to my roommates being scared shitless, like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? Like, I need good reasons. And I had only had like 7 when the time was coming around for me to produce 10. And so it was like 10 reasons. And he read them and actually screamed them to our squad and the company. And he was like, these are shit. I need a new 10 by the end of the night. He was like, by the end of the night, come with 10 better reasons than this. And he like crumpled up the paper and threw it at my feet. And then I ended up rewriting them. And one of them, like, they were for real along the lines of because she can get pregnant, basically. One of them, apologies for my French, but I was like, for lack of a better term, she has boobs. And then when he was reading that out loud later, like flash forward to when he was reading them, and he was laughing, so I actually did well for this. Like, he was like, yeah, like, this is so much better, when he was 2 reasons in. But then reason 3 was like, because she has boobs. And Payne was like, Morden, the better term is tits. And he screams that. And I was just like trying hard not to be embarrassed. Again, trying to keep a straight face because I'm in my bearing and no one can fucking break. So that was another funny thing. 10 reasons that I had to come up with of why someone was a woman. And then he gave the list to her later. And apparently that went down well. Thank goodness. Like, I was just a joke for them that day. But that wasn't uncommon. It wasn't like I was being extra stupid or being singled out in the grand scheme of things, because my other roommates had been tasked to write things as well. One of them was tasked with like writing a breakup letter to his girlfriend, I think. Or no, it wasn't a breakup letter. It was telling his girlfriend that he was coming out, specifically that he was transitioning. And she had to like write a letter explaining to the girlfriend of like why he was transitioning. And that was also a pretty unreal moment that I was helping my roommate write. And I have a picture of that letter to this day, and that cracks me up. But yeah, really, for all of the bad moments, for every like 2 bad moments, there was a really funny moment that I will never forget that was totally positive, and not just like positive through like the self growth suffering sort of kind of positive. So at the end of all this, because I wasn't staying at the academy forever, it's not like this was actually me being enrolled. So at the end of 6 days, my dad drove down and he came to pick us up, and we had this whole like closing ceremonies thing. Payne shook his hand and he told him how I did really well, honestly. And Payne had looked him in the eyes and was like, sir, like, I hope we see your daughter next year. And I didn't really think anything of it, even though a little bit of me was like, yeah, that's right. Like, I'm super proud and I hope he's seeing value in me. I actually didn't really think too much about it until I was in the car telling my dad all about my experience. And my dad was like, oh my God, you didn't cry during the interrogation, like, and everyone else did, like, stuff like that. Little details that were adding up. And my dad was like, oh my God, I figured he would say that to everyone. Like, I hope we see your son or daughter, whatever, next year. But my dad was like, I'm starting to think that he actually really meant it. And I'm starting to think that you're made for this. Long story short, obviously, I didn't end up going to the Naval Academy. And I didn't consider it for a while, honestly, after that. As much as I loved the experience, I kind of just settled on the sentiment that I know I could do it if I wanted to. And again, I know the experience I had was 1/1 millionth of the actual like pain and mental game and everything that they experience. But at that point, I really was like, no, if I wanted to do it, I know I could. I know I'm mentally tough. I know I'm disciplined. And that just proved it to me. And I found peace in that, honestly, because I did consider it. But then also part of me just like knew that wasn't the route I was supposed to go. And although I was back and forth and even beating myself up after the fact that I didn't decide to go through with the training for it, I just had to follow my gut. And I will talk about this piece of lore forever, honestly. It is one of my favorite things to randomly bring up. And there are even more details than I have said in this episode, but it's just so damn long, I couldn't possibly add any more. And that's not to say that I didn't cry in the car when I was with my dad. And I remember I was like, my dad was like, how was it? How was it? And I was so overstimulated and I was just so emotionally exhausted and run through after 6 days of compartmentalizing everything and just being run down and built up again and then run down again. And so I remember I was like, just get to the car. I couldn't even talk. If I started talking, I was going to cry because I felt like it was finally signing off like that permission to breathe a little bit. And then I remember the second the door closed, I started sobbing. And it wasn't from sadness. It wasn't because I felt like it's so hard to put words behind that feeling. But I think it really was just tired and I was letting it all out. It was like 7 days worth of emotions that just like, it's the same way when you're frustrated, you cry, you know what I mean? Like crying isn't always sadness. Crying is a lot of things. So I was a lot of things and that's just how it materialized. And I couldn't stop sobbing for I think like 15 minutes, if not more. We were on the highway, like pulled out of the academy and everything long after, and I was still crying on the highway. So it might have been longer. And then I cried so hard that I cried myself to sleep. And then I probably took like a 45-minute hour nap in the front seat. And that was the best sleep and the most sleep consistently without like waking up in fits I had for that entire past week. And my dad was just really excited for me. And I felt bad because I knew how badly my parents maybe not wanted me to go, but just how much they believed in me that I could go. And that they maybe thought I wasn't, I don't know, believing in myself, taking advantage of an opportunity, seeing enough of the positives, whatever it was. I knew they were a little bit sad. I won't say disappointed. They certainly weren't disappointed in me. They were really proud of me for still going through it. But yeah, at the end of the day, I just decided it needed to be my decision and I made my choice and I stuck to it. So now every single year when the Army Navy game comes on, I am sat at the sofa and I am supporting Navy. Sorry about it. My pop-up was in the Army and he hates that fact to this day. He was like, what did I do wrong where you are a Navy fan? But that 6 days is enough for a lifetime of support for the academy and appreciation for that particular branch of the military. And I don't think I could ever forget at least the opening lines of the Navy Blue and Gold, because that's another thing. I'll sit down and I'll watch the game and when they sing their alma mater, I'm right there singing with them. I don't know, just a little special part of me is at the academy. And actually both of my roommates ended up going to the academy, which I think is even funnier. And one of them did a dump after their plebe year. And at the end, they included a picture of all three of us together. And she tagged me in it, which was extra funny because I don't go to the academy. But then academy people started following me, I guess, thinking that I went through with it. I don't know. I don't know if Oregon was in my bio at that point. But yeah, like I said before, I'm still in contact with them every once in a while and I keep tabs and they're really great people. So thank you so much for hearing me out. As always, I really appreciate it. and follow the Instagram for extra content during the week at HBU Hear Me Out on Instagram. Hope you enjoyed, and beat Army. Bye, guys.